Hello. Today we're going to continue our discussion about the brain, specifically focusing on the diencephalon. So I'm going to try to pick up our brain model so that we can orient ourselves to it. So I'm going to take out, so right now I'm holding the brain upside down because it's just easier for me to be able to hold it that way. And I'm going to take out the parts that we don't need. So there's the cerebellum. We're not talking about that today. And then pretty much everything that's left is the cerebral hemispheres, which we just lost one half of right there. So now I'm going to remove the cerebral hemispheres. And what we're left with is this. And this part together makes up the brainstem and the diencephalon. So when we're looking at this right here, do you see the gyri, like those ridges? That tells me that's part of the cerebral hemispheres. This is actually the insula. And then this around here, I don't know if you can see its texture. Yeah, look at that. That texture tells me those must be nerve tracts, so that must be the corpus callosum. So then we can see, look at number, 25 right there is a gland. And then over here, that gland right there, where are you? That my finger is touching. That's the only part of the diencephalon that we can see from this view. So we need to actually open it up and then we'll have a much clearer picture. So again, up here is part of the insula, and then all of this stuff down here is the brainstem, like this would connect to the spinal cord. So the diencephalon that we're going to be talking about today is these structures right in here, like 21, 22, 23 in there, and there's that like little teeny gland that I showed you from the other side. So diencephalon. I'm going to show you some pictures and then we might come back to this again at the end. So if you want to print this diagram, that might be helpful for you because then you can label it. The thalamus is this like kind of dark purple circular thing, or like in here it's number 21. You can see the big round thing. And the thalamus, like I like to kind of think of it as the gateway to the cerebral hemispheres. Because basically anything that's sent to the brain that needs to get to the cerebral hemispheres has to pass through the thalamus first. Specifically, all afferent nerve impulses. If you remember, afferent impulses, they come from our sensory receptors and they move towards the CNS. So let's say that you smell something that smells like really good, like maybe like chocolate chip cookies baking or something like that. So your olfactory receptors would sense that, then it would send the message up the spinal cord, it would go up the brainstem, and it would reach the thalamus. And then the thalamus is going to say, oh, that's olfactory, I'm going to send it here. Or if we're feeling really hot, the hot signal would reach the thalamus will send it to this part of the cerebral cortex. If we're tasting something really good, it might send it to like this part of the cerebral cortex. So that's what I mean when I say like it relays sensory signals. It takes information from the entire body and it sends it to where it's supposed to go within the cerebral hemispheres. So be able to make the decisions that way. The epithalamus is this kind of like light purple, like lilac color right here. And this is one of the glands that was sticking out when I showed it to you earlier. So it's the smaller of the two glands. It's labeled as number 25, if you can see that on there, epithalamus. Or when we open it up sideways, like there's the epithalamus, but it's so small that we almost can't see it. So the epithalamus's main job is to secrete this hormone called melatonin, and melatonin controls our sleep-wake cycles. So it's basically the one that makes you go to sleep. And the gland is called the pineal gland, so that part that sticks out right there is the pineal gland. And then the last part of the diencephalon is the hypothalamus. Hypo means like less or below, because it's located below the thalamus. And not like you can pick one most important part of your brain, but this is like the most important part of your brain. It pretty much does everything. Oh yeah, and it's this entire kind of like bluish structure all the way through here, including this gland that's sticking off of it right there, the pituitary gland. It is involved in regulating pretty much the entire body and like making sure that we maintain homeostasis. So if we're thinking about the food we eat, the hypothalamus has to be able to sense like our blood sugar levels, the water we drink. The hypothalamus has to be able to sense how much like how concentrated our blood is to know if we need to like have more water or less water. It needs to be able to sense our blood to see if it's hot or cold so it can change the temperature. The hypothalamus also secretes hormones that control the entire autonomic nervous system. If you remember, that's the branch that controls the smooth muscle, the cardiac muscle, and the glands. So that was like the parasympathetic, sympathetic. The sympathetic is like the fight or flight. The parasympathetic is the rest and digest. So everything that happens in the automatic nervous system is controlled by the hypothalamus. So again, like everything in the entire body is happening there. We can also think of like if you have to do physical activity, your autonomic nervous system is the thing that's like telling your breathing to increase and your respiration to increase and your pupils to dilate. The only reason it's doing that is because it got a message from the hypothalamus. So, yeah, anything that you can think of that's related to keeping our body alive, hypothalamus. Also, hormones associated with puberty, like developing secondary sexual characteristics like hair and breasts and things like that, all of that comes from the pituitary gland. Notice that it sticks out further than the pineal gland. And also, you might remember from when we talked about astrocytes that they create like a blood-brain barrier, which is kind of like a protective filter between the brain. We don't want a whole bunch of like random substances to be able to get to the brain, so there's this extra layer that kind of keep things out. That's the blood-brain barrier. Hypothalamus does not have the blood-brain barrier. It needs to have direct access to the blood so that's able to sense it. So we can kind of think of like a structure function relationship here is like why does it stick out like that? Well, it needs to like be able to dip out into the bloodstream and sense what's going on. And I will go back to the model one more time now that we have oriented the rest of ourselves. So taking a look at this again, 21 is the thalamus. 23 right here, that is the hypothalamus or the pituitary gland. Well, I would say 22 is the hypothalamus and 23 is the pituitary gland. Over here on this side, that's the pineal gland. So I don't know if you can really tell from this image, but it's a lot smaller. Let's flip it around and like right there, we can still see the pituitary gland, but like where's the pineal gland? I don't know, I can't see it. You have to really turn it and then there's the pineal gland right there. And then just to get back to the way that we started one more time, the front of the brain, that's going to be the pituitary gland, and then the back is the pineal gland. And again, I can just tell that apart because of their size difference. So thanks for watching. Let me know what questions you have.